Good evening. I'm going to reconvene the meeting. Members, the next item of business before us is House File 861, the Omnibus Transportation Bill. Representative Torkelson moves that House File 861 be referred to the General Register. Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment. Would you like to deal with that first, or you want me to present the bill?
Why don't you deal with that one first? Representative Torkelson moves the A17-0313 amendment. Representative Torkelson.
Thank you. This amendment removes some language that was added in the tax committee. The effects of that language were not entirely clear when it was adopted, and it's just best if we remove this from the bill, Mr. Chair.
And members, yeah, this is the language relating to paying a higher price for commercial appraisals, and I guess as it was further investigated, I think that this applied to more units of government and maybe had a larger fiscal cost than was anticipated. Are there any questions on the 0313 amendment? See no questions. All in favor of the A17-0313 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Torkelson, could you present your bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House File 861 and its third engrossment is a substantial bill to address the transportation needs of the state of Minnesota. We do this with a significant amount of spending. First in the biennium, the first biennium is over $2 billion, $2.1 billion, and over the 10-year life of the over the 10-year period, as this bill recommends a variety of spending, it totals $6 billion invested in our transportation system here in the state of Minnesota. We do this without raising taxes, without raising the gas tax. Instead, we are capturing sales tax revenue on the sale of auto parts, rental car tax, and motor vehicle lease tax. Those revenues, the new revenues, total $450 million. That is not 100% of those estimated revenues, but it does meet our target. We gather those funds into what we are calling the Transportation Priorities Fund, and from there we distribute them to the various needs within the transportation budget. We do also hold the Met Council harmless by limiting the growth of their budget to its current level, and that is accomplished by taking away some of their general fund allocations as their MVEST revenues, Minnesota Vehicle Sales Tax revenues, rise. We actually reduce their general fund allocation to the point that their funding from the state is held steady. We also require them to require CTIB to pay for transit operating costs instead of the state of Minnesota. We do have language in this bill that addresses efficiencies. We expect 15% efficiencies from the Department of Transportation, and they've agreed that they can do that, but we do not book that as a number on the spreadsheet. As a result of this bill, it'll be $428 million in 18-19 of additional funds into the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund. And the total revenues, as I mentioned earlier, is $450 million over the biennium from sales tax revenues. We also approach bonding as a source of funds for building roads. We have $250 million a year for 4 years of authorized trunk highway bonds. The difference here is that these trunk highway bonds will be actually serviced by the general fund revenue from these sales tax dollars. The reason for doing that is that we can do additional bonding without approaching the 20% guidance that's part of the department's language, where they try to keep their bonding to below that threshold, and we can do this, service these bonds with general funds and not affect the threshold with those. There is $300 million of corridors of commerce bonding, and those are trunk highway bonds in the first year of the biennium. We are also making suggestions to the Capital Investment Committee that they do $200 million a year in general obligation bonding in the 4 years of the first 4 years and ongoing through the 10 years actually. And also we do recommend significant bonding to fund rail grade crossings at $35 million a year. There are major differences, as I expressed earlier, from the governor's plans that we are not increasing gas tax, we are not increasing tab fees. We are, however, eliminating the MnDOT passenger rail office, and there are another number of other provisions within the bill, such as license plates for law enforcement memorial license plates, and start seeing motorcycle license plates. There are some memorial bridges and roads that we have identified through the committee process. We do fund a pilot program for suburb-to-suburb transit, commonly known as the 494 transit project. There is also an increase in funding for the State Trooper Training Academy. Those candidates for a state trooper that take part in the academy will be funded at 100% of their salary level in the second portion of the academy, and 80% of that level in the first portion of the academy. We are funding a helicopter for the Highway Patrol. They have 3 helicopters now, one of which I think, last report, actually all 3 were temporarily grounded. One is, I believe, permanently grounded, another not quite so permanently grounded, and the third one just recently had an error code come up. But they would reduce their fleet to 2 helicopters with the addition of this new helicopter that we are recommending funding for. With that, Mr. Chair, those are the highlights of the bill. Given the late hour, I will refrain from too much detail, but I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chair Torkelson. Are there any other amendments to the bill? All right, discussion to the bill. Representative Hornstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of brief comments. I would urge a no vote. The issue of taking general fund money to fund the roads and bridge needs in this bill is ill-conceived. The contractors that came to our committee spoke repeatedly of the fact that they need stable, reliable, dedicated funding. And we have that in Minnesota, constitutionally dedicated funding. And to deviate from that at this point is not going to solve this problem. And in fact, it's going to exacerbate pressures on the general fund. So when we take money from schools, from senior citizens, from nursing homes and other priorities, and instead of using our dedicated sources, we will run the risk of losing this money the first time we have a problem with our economy and a deficit. And so that's what happened in Wisconsin. They used general fund money and had a deficit, and boom, they took it right out of the transportation fund to fund other things. So that's what we're setting ourselves up for. Secondly, there are deep transit cuts. I would disagree with the chairman that this does not hold the Met Council harmless. In fact, there's a $122 million cut. That's going to result in a 40% reduction in regular route bus service. We've heard a lot from the other side about how they like buses, they don't like trains, but this really eviscerates the local bus service. And we also don't fund very important bipartisan bus rapid transit lines, for example, the one that goes from Minneapolis to Lakeville, the Orange Line, and St. Paul to Woodbury, which is the Gold Line. The chairman mentioned rail safety, and I appreciated that Chair Torkelson and I pretty much introduced similar bills related to rail safety earlier in the session, trying to make sure that we have better communication between first responders and the railroads. Those bills didn't get heard, but a bill that absolved railroads of liability in light rail corridors was fast-tracked, and unfortunately that's in the bill. That runs the risk of taxpayers paying the cost of a serious rail incident, a spill or an explosion in a light rail corridor. I think that's very troubling and problematic. This also falls short in terms of expectations the Department of Public Safety has in terms of the governor's recommendations and priorities. So for all those reasons and more, Mr. Chair, I would recommend a no vote.
Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was hoping, and we were when we borrow in this nature, we usually like to have a little comfort level of having looked out further than, and I think we heard from Mr. Lee, the 4 years out, and each year it was dramatically higher, and it would have just been helpful to get the chart that showed that all, but I think maybe the NDOT wasn't able to get that together. So that's a little bit of an unknown. I wish we could still get that before this reaches the floor. I don't know how soon that's going to happen. The part that I want to talk about and remind everyone about, we had amazing testimony on this from the business community, who tried to paint a different picture about what you need to do in a city to keep a region economically competitive. But I was struck most by the riders, and one gentleman in particular who said he wasn't going to write his testimony down because he didn't want to read it because he wanted to look us in the eye. And he was mostly bewildered because he realized we were not cutting Greater Minnesota Transit. They were getting extra funding. We were not cutting the Suburban Transit Association. They were getting additional. Only this segment of the transit system was going to be cut. And he couldn't understand what was the reason. And he looked at us and said, "Is there an answer for that? Can someone explain this to me?" Because these are the people who use it to get to work. It keeps them moving and going and living and being part of this vibrant and competitive economy here. So whether it was from the riders or from the business community and local government officials, there is a confusion about what we're trying to accomplish with this really unprecedented backward step in terms of public mass transit. In a city, the only way you prepare for another 800,000 people is you have to move masses of people in some corridors. That's what public mass transit is, moving masses of people in some corridors. And you do that carefully, you choose the corridors carefully, you choose the mode carefully. None of that is done in any kind of haphazard way. And to see that dismantled, I feel some of that same bewilderment that the riders feel. And I hope at some point, I know, Mr. Chair, or the author of the bill right now, not the chair, that you've suggested maybe we're still, this is an ongoing process. I hope that's the case, that we're still looking at this bill and having some conversation about it. But that's the most painful part of the bill for me.
Representative Torkelson, closing comments.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said earlier, this is a substantial bill that is a big step forward in addressing transportation funding in the state of Minnesota, and I ask for your support.
Seeing no further discussion, Chair Torkelson renews his motion that House File 861, as amended, be referred to the General Register. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion prevails. House File 861, as amended, is referred to the General Register. Members, tomorrow, I will announce the time that we're meeting on the floor. We will be taking up the public safety bill, the legacy bill. I will say the agriculture bill, although I got to talk to Representative Hamilton about it one more time, and possibly the higher ed bill. The ag bill would be an addition to what we have on the scheduled agenda. Questions, Representative Carlson?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I thought you posted the higher ed bill.
I did.
One of the memos, so that's a change then, or?
It's no, it's still on the agenda.
Well, your comment just now just clarified that very quickly. You said you may take up the higher ed bill, or you may not?
Both. We're putting it on the agenda, Representative Carlson.
And you plan on taking it up? The
The
reason I asked that, Mr. Chairman, is that the Democrats will be meeting, and I want to know if we should talk about the bill then tomorrow.
I guess I would talk about it, Representative Carlson.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right, members, thank you. Meeting's adjourned. Good night.